Canada, the vast land between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, boasts a rich history spanning from ancient indigenous civilizations through the struggles of French and British colonization to the formation of a modern, multicultural and multilingual nation. From its dense forests and expansive plains to its bustling cities, Canada exemplifies diversity, stability, and the harmonious blending of heritage and modernity. The country's story reflects its long journey from geographical isolation to a powerful international presence. Welcome to this new video in our series on the history of North American countries. Archaeological and genetic evidence suggests that the Americas were the last two continents reached by humans during the last ice age, between 50,000 and 17,000 years ago. Lower sea levels allowed for a gradual migration from Siberia to Northwest America via the Bering Land Bridge, but individuals remained isolated in Alaska and the Yukon due to massive ice sheets. As the ice melted around 16,000 years ago, humans spread south and east into Canada, leaving traces at sites such as Haida Gwaii Island and the Bluefish Caves. They relied on hunting and gathering, leaving behind stone tools and the remains of large animals. By 8000 BCE, the climate had stabilized somewhat, and societies began to specialize based on local resources. Between 2000 BCE and 1000 CE, eastern Canada experienced the woodland period, characterized by pottery making and the flourishing of trade networks such as the Hopewell tradition, along with the spread of the Algonquian and Iroquois peoples. In the western north, coastal cultures flourished in British Columbia, dependent on salmon and cedar, while the Arctic saw a transition from Dorset to Inuit ancestors by 1500 CE. European contact began with the arrival of the Vikings around 1000 CE, followed by English and Portuguese exploration in the late 15th century. France established colonies along the St. Lawrence River under figures like Samuel de Champlain, giving rise to New France with an economy based on the fur trade and alliances with indigenous peoples. During the 17th and 18th centuries, competition between France and Britain for influence in North America intensified, culminating in the fall of New France to Britain after the 7 Years' War. However, French culture and religion were not eradicated, later contributing to the formation of modern Canada with its linguistic and cultural diversity. After the American Revolution, Canadians found themselves in a complex situation. While some intellectually sympathized with the Republican and liberal ideals championed by the United States, the majority remained politically apathetic, preferring stability to adventure. Therefore, Canada maintained neutrality during the War of 1812, a war imposed upon it by two powers greater than itself. The signing of the Treaty of Paris formally ended the American Revolution and redrawn the map of North America. Britain ceded the territories south of the Great Lakes, and the United States was granted extensive fishing rights in the Gulf of St. Lawrence and along the Newfoundland coast. However, Britain's disregard for certain treaty provisions, its continued military presence in ceded territories, and its support for its Native American allies created lasting tension with the Americans. These tensions escalated, culminating in the War of 1812, in which the United States attempted to invade Canada and expel Britain from North America. Most of these attempts failed. Despite limited American successes, most notably the capture of Lake Erie and the death of Chief Tecumseh, the war ended without any border changes, thanks to the Treaty of Ghent. Nevertheless, it left a profound psychological impact on the Canadian psyche, characterized by a persistent suspicion of American intentions and a fear of expansionism. Then the political and social contradictions erupted in the 1837 rebellions in Upper and Lower Canada against British colonial rule. These rebellions were violently suppressed, but their repercussions were felt in London, which dispatched Lord Durham to investigate the causes. Durham's report made important recommendations, most notably the establishment of accountable government and linking executive power to the will of the people, as well as the unification of the two Canadas into a single entity. Despite the controversy, accountable government was achieved by 1848, paving the way for a more stable and modern political development. This political transformation coincided with a significant demographic shift. Canada experienced a massive wave of immigration from the British Isles, particularly Scots affected by the Highland evictions, and later Irish people fleeing the famine of the 1840s. This influx altered the demographic and economic structure of the colonies. In the West, exploration and trade accelerated along the Pacific coast. The Northwest Company merged with the Hudson's Bay Company, and colonies like Vancouver and British Columbia were established as part of a British policy to consolidate sovereignty and prevent American expansion into the Pacific. The Quebec and Charlottetown Conferences, 1864, laid the political foundations for the Confederation of British North America, culminating in the declaration of the Dominion of Canada on July 1, 1867, under the British North America Act. The Confederation arose in response to defensive and economic needs, particularly the need for railroads in the maritime provinces, as well as fears of American expansion. It also resolved the political stalemate between Upper and Lower Canada through a federal system. Following the Confederation, territorial expansion accelerated thanks to the Transcontinental Railroad project. British Columbia joined in 1871, followed by Prince Edward Island in 1873, while Newfoundland's accession was delayed until 1949. In the West, John A. Macdonald established the Ride Police to ensure sovereignty, and the Météo rebellions, led by Louis Riel, 1869 and 1885, were suppressed, consolidating federal control but deepening the linguistic divide. The country's policies toward indigenous peoples were enacted through treaties and the Indian Act, 1876, including a system of residential schools. Later in the century, the country's legal status was solidified with the passage of the Criminal Code, 1892. During Wilfrid Laurier's tenure, agricultural provinces expanded, Alberta and Saskatchewan 1905, and trade with the United States became a point of contention. Canada's participation in World War I contributed to the development of a relatively independent national identity, despite the conscription crisis and the rift with Quebec. After the war, Canada strengthened its international standing with an independent seat at the Paris Peace Conference and the League of Nations, and expanded its foreign policy autonomy. Domestically, women's suffrage was gradually achieved, 1916, 1918 federally, and 1940 in Quebec. The Great Depression hit the country hard after 1929, causing exports to collapse and unemployment to soar. The Bennett government failed to achieve a recovery despite attempts inspired by the New Deal, which brought the Liberals, led by Mackenzie King, back to power in 1935, ushering in an era of broader social policies. The Liberals used the slogan "King or Anarchy" to win the election, promising a favourable trade agreement with the United States. Mackenzie King's government passed the Reciprocal Trade Agreement, a turning point in economic relations between Canada and the United States, significantly increasing trade. By then, the worst of the Depression had passed, and the government launched relief programs such as the National Housing Act and the National Employment Commission. During this same period, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation became a Crown Corporation. The National Airline and the Canadian Film Council were established, and Parliament transformed the Bank of Canada into a Crown Corporation. The country also experienced a strict immigration policy and a rise in nationalism, and Western Canada continued to suffer economically until the outbreak of World War II. New political parties emerged, such as the Social Credit Movement and the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, and Canada witnessed significant popular protests. In 1931, the British Parliament passed the Act of Westminster, granting Canada near-complete legislative autonomy, a pivotal step toward independence. With the outbreak of World War II, Canada declared war on Germany in September 1939, a week after Britain affirmed its independence. Canada played a crucial role in supplying Britain with food, raw materials and ammunition, training Commonwealth pilots, defending the North Atlantic, and participating in the invasions of Italy, France and the Netherlands. Over 1.1 million Canadians served in the armed forces, with more than 45,000 killed and 55,000 wounded. The government focused on building an independent Royal Canadian Air Force and implemented the Commonwealth Air Training Plan, while the Canadian military fought in challenging battles such as the defence of Hong Kong and the Italian invasion, and achieved success in the invasions of France and the Netherlands in 1944-45. Politically, Mackenzie King refused to form a government of national unity, and the 1940 federal election proceeded as normal. The 1944 draft crisis strained the unity of French and Anglo-Canadians, while relations with the United States deepened during the war, including the construction of the Alaska Highway, the establishment of air bases in Newfoundland, and the internment of 22,000 Canadians of Japanese descent due to wartime fears, even though military reports did not consider them a threat. After the war, prosperity returned to Canada with the expansion of universal health care, old age pensions, and veterans' benefits. Newfoundland joined Canada as a province in 1949. During the Cold War, Canadian foreign policy was closely aligned with the United States. Canada was a founding member of NATO, deployed troops to Korea, conducted population relocations in the Arctic, and contributed to global peacekeeping operations led by Lester B. Pearson, who was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Canadian governments also sought to develop air defence by creating the Avro, Arrow and Beaumark missiles, and by establishing NORAD. There was broad cross-party consensus on foreign policy until the 1957 Suez Crisis. In the 1960s, Quebec experienced a silent revolution that challenged the traditional ecclesiastical system and modernized the economy and society. Nationalist demands rose, culminating in the October 1970 crisis. In 1976, the Parti Québécois won the election, advocating for French language rights and potential sovereignty, while a referendum on sovereignty was rejected in 1980. During this period, Canada adopted a new national flag, hosted Expo 67 to commemorate its centennial, and amended its immigration laws to include people from all over the world, with immigrants concentrated in major cities. During the premiership of Pierre Trudeau, Canada sought to expand social and cultural rights, including multiculturalism, a bilingual policy, and plans to amend the Constitution. In 1982, the Canada Act and the Constitution Act were passed, establishing Canada as a fully sovereign nation with a Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This period was followed by internal challenges, such as the 1985 Indiana Airways bombings, constitutional reform efforts like the Meech Lake Accord and the failed Charlottetown Accord, and crises with the United States over the environment and free trade. By the late 20th and early 21st centuries, Canada had played an international role in conflicts such as those in Kuwait and Afghanistan, addressed Indigenous rights issues through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and implemented social changes such as same-sex marriage and multiculturalism. The country experienced a restructuring of its conservative parties, with the rise of the Conservative Party under Stephen Harper, followed by the return of the Liberals under Justin Trudeau in 2015. Modern Canadian history reflects a blend of national independence, social developments, multiculturalism, and economic and political integration with the United States, along with ongoing struggles over identity and territorial sovereignty. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.